Welcome, Joe.
Hey, Shilpa, so good to be with you. Thank you.
Before we hit record, I was telling you that, wow, your voice is such a podcast voice. Very, very calm.
I love that. That's real encouragement. I appreciate that. I look to little signals and cues like that. The God of this universe sometimes shows up, maybe manifests in a burning bush type deal, but most of the times it's little whispers that we hear, when we're in that quiet time. But other times it's just little bitty comments like that, like it's almost like God's leaving us little breadcrumbs to follow.
Yeah.
So I do take that. And those little words of encouragement have gone a long way to get me to this point where I have this book and I'm on podcasts and just loving all of this new experience and technology. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on. And I just want to say up front, and I'm going to speak for your audience too. Thank you for what you're putting out into the world, like the goodness that you're putting out into the world, and it exploring so many deep topics. It's entertaining and it's thought provoking, and it's real easy to see the love in your eyes, my friend.
Oh, wow. Okay. You just made my day and teary eyed because that is, when you work, like you were talking about, like a writer, you're in your own little silo and it's isolating. And sometimes you don't have too much engagement as a solopreneur. And so that feedback and to be appreciated is something I'm so grateful for. So thank you. Now, for the audience that's listening, I wanted to share a little anecdote of how I became aware of you, and which is you reached out to me, and I do have a lot of people reach out to me. However, I have a big screening process, and I go through like we were talking about Podmatch, so I get most of my guests from there. But when someone directly approaches me, I typically may not immediately say yes. I'm not um, negative, but I'm often like, well, we'll see how the schedule plays out. However, with you, as soon as I read about mindfulness and the intersection between that and light and photography, I thought, wow, he's spot on. He's awesome for the season of spirituality because it takes a spiritual lens to be able to see the power of photography through that approach, so to speak. So I'd love for you to share what you do, just starting high level for those who may not
Okay,
be aware, and then maybe go deeper into the journey on how you arrive there.
sure. Well, professionally, about so I'm just getting ready to turn 60. Um, I'm My birthday's in March. So that puts me like in the first 60, 70, whatever days of being Gen X. Okay. So there's no boomer going on here. All Gen X, baby. I made it under the wire, like 2 months under the wire. So that makes me feel young. Um, so this stage of life that I'm in is very relevant to this whole journey. And for those of you who are listening that are my age or older in this season of life, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. For those of you who are younger, you will know what I'm talking about. Um, I'm gonna and I also want you to know that there may be times when I quote scripture or something and I talk about my Christian faith, and that's super important to me. And um, I wrote this book um, wanting to be real transparent about my faith, but also really imploring, first of all, speaking to other Christians, imploring them to get this be still and know that I am God thing that we read in scripture. Like, what's that all about? And for Christians to kind of drop out of their head, learn what it's like to drop down from their head into their bodies and learn this. Because if it's just nonstop sermons and scripture and talk, there's not this experiential part of our faith. which I think that the ancients so naturally were mindful because they didn't have the distractions that we have, right? So, just rest assured that I implore Christians to embrace mindfulness, to understand what this is like. But then to the rest of my audience, I explain this really amazing commonality that we have called consciousness, and it's not some abstract thing. And so many people have never had their consciousness light turned on. Of like, what does that really mean to hmm, be with you right now versus overthinking what I'm going to say next. So even in this dynamic kind of high pressure situation, there is the ability for me to kind of communicate to you from my heart, rather than just being in my head. So that's the first thing that I want you to know about me. Second thing is, didn't have a word for it back then, but I realize now that I was born a highly sensitive person. Um, and um, that was very liberating for me. I think there was a Google talk on that in the late teens about HSP, the highly sensitive people. And I saw that, I just locked into that. And it just explains so much. So why is that relevant? Well, being this highly sensitive person, whether it's from childhood or adult or my professional pursuits, um, that really came into play. And as time went on, I sort of got sucked into the vortex of the mental health industrial complex. And I started walking around with a lot of labels on me, diagnoses on me. Really struggled. About 10 years ago was the very worst of my struggle with depression and anxiety. Hard core periods of time, suicidal depression, suicidal ideations, the real deal. And medication, talk therapy, all of the traditional approaches weren't working. So this I don't want to call it a battle anymore, but this journey um, with mental health has been very much part of my story. So that's the underpinnings of this book. And then I can tell you, if you'd like me to go on, I'll tell you more about the good.
Yes. For the audience that is watching on YouTube, hold up your book, and those that
Mhm.
are not watching on YouTube, and
Mhm.
share with us the title, please.
Well, this is the Mindful Photography Field Guide. They're 15 smartphone photography practices for inner peace. It's about a 200-page book. I'm a career long graphic designer, videographer, photographer. So the book is color, and it's a really rich design with from photos to illustrations to it's really packed. Um, and so this book was born out of this journey that both of me kind of having my mindfulness light turn on, and then making this connection, and then tying that into the faith of my childhood. So about 10 years ago, I was newly remarried. I thought I thought that my future was mapped out and things were going to go hunky dory, and I made a move, happened to be to Austin, Texas from San Antonio, where I spent most of my life. And it did not go well. uh, and so 5 years ago, I found myself unexpectedly divorced and on this journey. So I bought a truck. I bought this trailer that I'm sitting in here. I left with my doodle, Frankie, who's down here, and off I went to this place where I am right now in Colorado. I had some history in this valley. I live down the road from Aspen, so beautiful, beautiful area in western Colorado. So 10 years ago, I found myself at the very depths, the very worst of the depression that I'd ever experienced. And But one thing that I was doing at the time is I was ramping up my YouTube channel and my focus was on street photography. So, man, in Austin, Texas, it's very gritty and very colorful, and it's just a great um, kind of canvas for street photography. So I would go out with my big boy camera and a GoPro on the top, and I'd walk through the streets like this, hum de dum de dum, and I'd approach someone. And I say street photography, really what I started calling it is street portraits. So I'd approach someone and say, "Hey brother, my name's Joe. Hey man, I'm a professional photographer here in town. I like to come downtown and practice my portraits. Would you be willing to spend just a few minutes with me? I've got a few bucks I could spare, and it just like say 3 minutes." Yeah, sure. So I'd have these encounters with people and work with them in the streets and do these sort of impromptu portrait sessions, and people were witnessing my interaction with this whole POV thing. So I would notice, like, I would peel myself off of the couch so depressed, but I'd get up and take my scooter downtown and start doing this, and I'd get back onto the scooter or hop back into my car or whatever, and I could feel just psychic change, man. Like something had changed. Like I was so like immersed in that creative process. And that's a very intense form of mindfulness. I mean, the guts that it takes to walk up to strangers, but I noticed something was going on there. And meanwhile, thanks to God, I found this church in Austin. Um, well, Austin's got funky everything. And I've been used to kind of typical Christian evangelical churches, and I love that. And I'm actually I'm very involved in a church like that now. It's wonderful. But that Austin period of time, like I had reached the end of everything. I had tapped out the mental health profession. I had tried everything to no avail. Um, and that included my religion. I wasn't finding something to hang on to that was really helping the inner problem. And so I stumbled across this church in Austin that they're a Christian church, but they're really into meditation too. And I found out about this Catholic um, priest back in the 70s, Father Thomas Keating, and something called centering prayer. Have you ever heard of that? Okay, so in the whole Catholic world in the 70s, and I grew up like Methodist and Baptist and stuff. But in the Catholic world, they were very forward thinking because in the 70s, there were these monks and they were uh, in their monasteries, and they're seeing this influx of people coming back from India and all this Eastern influence come back, transcendental meditation, etc. Right? And so they basically came up with an alternative for that called centering prayer. I mean, tell me if this sounds familiar. A 20-minute sit, focus on the breath, a sacred breath or a sacred word or whatever. So this church, I found this blending of my faith and meditation. And that right there, that changed everything because I learned a skill that I didn't even realize I didn't have. And that's this: that no matter how much the anxiety, the depression is raging, by God, I prove to myself I can sit on my butt and let it rage, and it didn't kill me. Like, I realized that I can sustain that without acting out, without, like that's a very powerful superpower when you realize through meditation that you can do it. I mean, I think Father Keating himself made some comment like, the only way you can fail at meditation is if you get up before the timer goes off, like, and so the blending of that, the mindfulness that I was noticing and experiencing out on the streets doing street photography, and then this new practice that has deepened my faith so much, the ability to really hear God and be present with myself and with God and with scripture, my quiet time, whatever's happening. That was the turnaround for me.
And your journey also ties so back to the reality of being human. Because being human, as I know, is that anxiety can be very real for many of us. I often talk about that in my podcasts. And there was no label to describe it when I was younger. And I believe there was a lot of shame around it. And so I remember in graduate school, one of my professors reflecting on the fact that I was a really good student, but when it came down time for exams, I would melt. And he hinted, or even might have been direct, and said, Shilpa, maybe you have anxiety. And I was just horrified. Like, oh my gosh, what a label. Like, I was young then, and I didn't realize,
Mm.
fast forward 20 plus years later, that a lot of people are now aware of it, and we are ironically aware that there are tools, like you said, sitting still, being able to breathe, meditation, they're accessible to us. So I feel that more humans will be blessed by knowing your message, and also how you've now taken yet to that other level of bringing joy to the everyday experiences with photography. And I'm just so excited to even hear about that aspect of your life.
In this field guide, there are 5 different sections to it, and the and 15 different practices, but each practice has the same kind of formula, this focus, capture, shine thing. And I think it's so silly when people think they have some trademark formula. It's not any magic. It's just simply one, focus on body and surroundings. So the first thing we're going to do, it kind of two approaches to these practices. One of them is I can decide, hey, tomorrow morning I'm going to do practice 6, and oh yeah, that's great, man. I'm going to go on. I know a hike that I can go on. Bingo, that's what I know I'm going to do in the morning. That's one thing, plan a practice out. But really, so much of it is noticing when we're in a thought spiral. And so using these practices more as an interventionary technique when we're getting emotionally dysregulated, our thoughts are off in the ditch. So I have this intervening thing that's become so part of my daily habit. And it's you notice yourself, it's like, oh boy, I've been hijacked. All the signs, the physical signs and everything, and I'm freaking, and the tears are starting to well up, and my face is getting red. That's when I know. So, like, when mindfulness, there's a point of noticing that's the first. I, I'm not in my physical body. I'm in the matrix right now. I'm fully jacked in. I'm not in reality. Everything that I think I'm experiencing is cerebral. I'm not experiencing this through my senses. So the simple interventionary technique, I do it all the time, is I notice that, whoop, hand on the heart, 3 belly breaths. They don't have to be perfect diagram, blah, blah. Just hand on your heart, suck some oxygen down into those lungs, man. And I love the idea of not only hand on your heart, but just patting your heart like a mama would be patting a baby's back. Have some of that self-nurturing, self-comfort. Get present, get present. So, step one, focus on body and surroundings. Once I've done that, and then open my eyes, talk about the best tip I could give you to take great photographs is that right there. Just get present. Just get present and notice your surroundings. Um, I'm looking out my window at this little thing dangling down, and that's a shot right there. Like there's something cool that I'm looking at right there. That's a shot. And I just noticed it because I just opened my eyes in a new way. And then the second step is capture, but it's capture the present moment. We're not capturing a pretty photo um, just to to put it on social media. Like social media has no place in this process. Um, and so I'm capturing something about the present moment that's going to bring me there in the present moment. And then the third step is to shine your light and bless someone. It says in scripture, you don't take a lamp and cover it with a bowl. You let that lamp shine. You let your light shine before men so they may see your good deeds. So that process, this is the way that we're designed. So when I say shine my light on someone, this is the love step. This is when we're tapping into that universal energy of love and the healing of it. So I go out on a little mindful, it may be a quickie thing or it may be a more in depth practice. I come back with a bunch of photos. Have you ever heard of Marie Kondo? The tidying up Marie Kondo, right? So I've sort of stole some of her message in them. One of my practices is called tidying up. So I take those photos that I took, let's say I took a dozen, man, I get out the hatchet and I mean, brutal self editing, whittle that down to just three or maybe two of the most special ones that we really want to keep up. And it's not just this clump of images on our smartphone of garbage, right? Like a lot of us have a real phobia to looking at our smartphone photo library because it's such a nightmare, 15,000 photos. So I come to the end of that and I've got my photos whittled down. And now I share those with someone, not on the internet, not on social media in any way. But I took these photos, I send those. God, you know what? These have Shilpa's name written all over them. Boom, I send you a text and I just send you a love note. Like, Shilpa, I was just looking at the light bouncing off of these leaves and I thought of you and the light that you're putting out into the world. And I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for who you are. Even just saying that right now, like the tingles that you feel, the power, that is I mean, depression is a disease of isolation. And when we do that, we're opening ourselves up to God's flow. Here in the Rocky Mountains where I am, there I'm looking down at my little creek going past my little trailer here, 3 Mile Creek. If the settlers were here and and these, they had this water source and that water source started to cut off, believe you me, they'd be going upstream to look for whatever beavers have created a dam that'll turn into a stagnant pool of water doing nobody any good. Well, except the beavers, maybe. But that's kind of what God's flow is. When we dam ourselves up and self-isolate in this disease of isolation, we're stuck. And love is what breaks that dam and gets this love passing through us and helping others. This is how we're wired. Love is truly it. This is God is love. We're wired like this. We were designed like this to improve and feel good and connected and heal through love.
That is so beautiful the way you articulated so many nuances, I think. One of them being um, the way you describe that energy, metaphorically for me, is that that light and love. You're talking about energy. We're all energy. And when, like you were talking about the depression, when we are feeling that state of depression, it's that energy that's been constricted. When you allow yourself to be present, what you're doing is you're taking your lens and you're putting your light into that and allowing it to shine back on you. So energetically, you're expanding that light. You're expanding your own soul light, which I think is just amazing. The fact that you've now um, put your creative art into photography is an expansion of your soul, allowing others to then heal.
I love that. And you likening it to energy, and I've seen so much of your branding and your all of your content, um and you using that term. It's just such a blessing to hear other people, no matter how deep we are into our own theology and belief system. It's so liberating to hear other people using other terminology. Like I could say, now wait a second, what am I sensing from the Holy Spirit right now? What guidance am I getting from the Holy Spirit? I think you're kind of talking about something similar. Now, the Holy Spirit, this is a personal thing, and theologically, it's a little different animal, but still, hey, I've got in a situation going on right now with one of my gigs, and if I were to ask that energy, if I were to really tune into that energy and go, is that energy leading me towards that thing, or like a magnet? Is it, is that energy seem to be pushing me away? That's clearly pushing me away. I mean, this is the energy is taking me here, healing. It's also AI in the mental health space. The energy is taking me there, like the feedback that I'm getting from people and some experimenting that I'm doing with that. It's um, truly, if we're tapped into that guidance of like, where is the energy taking? I don't know. It just seems so pragmatic. And it's like everybody can tap into that. Everybody can relate to that, and I love that.
I love that as well. And I love how you are tying it into the, I would say, the bigger picture of spirituality. I often say this in my podcast, in my copy of my writing, is what is your why? At the end of the day, why are we doing what we're doing? And I can, I'd like to hear your why in a moment. I believe I know what it is. I can
Mhm.
share with you the take I have about a lot of things that we do when we are creative souls is that we believe that there's more to the work, there's more to us, there's more to how we can serve.
Mhm.
And by denying ourselves that opportunity to be creative or
Mhm.
voice our passion, amplify our voice, like you're doing. You're amplifying your voice, expanding your light. But if we don't do that, then why are we doing what we're doing? And so let's hear your why.
Questions like that have always been really challenging for me. Um, a highly sensitive mind like mine, and a mind that really loves to think. Um, those questions for me can kind of turn into an obsessive compulsive kind of thing. And so I'm cautious about locking that down of what the why is right now. Because I want to I want to I want to solve that problem by thinking it through, writing it out, branding it, and making a killer logo around it. And I don't have any tattoos, but maybe, put a tat, on my arm to remind myself of it, versus getting out there and doing the work. I
You
mean, I think I'm going to solve my problems by thinking it through and talking it out. No, this is like one of the life-saving things that I experienced again during that period about 10 years ago was DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. And a woman named Marsha Linehan in the 70s started, who suffered from, I'm going to use the label, even though I don't use labels anymore in mental health, but um, borderline personality disorder. So the untouchables, the absolute untouchables, the lepers of the mental health world, borderline personality disorder. Medication doesn't help, blah, blah, all these labels about that. And she started to introduce people to tactical ways to address it. I mean, if you're so dysregulated you can't even do a practice or a DBT practice or something, stick your face in a bowl of ice water. Like that practical, tactical thing was huge, and that helped me so much. So I can be very. Are you familiar with uh, Pressfield and the War of Art? Stephen Pressfield.
I think I am, but go ahead
Oh,
and share more.
game changer. I mean, it's called the War of Art. It's the play on the art of war. Um, and I mean, I can just summarize the book. It's about resistance. Like me going from pacing the floor, ruminating, making phone calls, and trying to work things out to my fingers on the keyboard, my me walking outside practicing my craft. You know the difference, like when you get in front and you're all of a sudden at your workstation there and you're in your mode, whoo, like your whole psyche shifts. Depression gone, you're in your thing, you're doing your thing. And so that resistance can show up in so many different forms. Depression can be resistance. Depression can be chosen. We can choose depression. We can choose anxiety when we're shirking what we know God's will is for us and what we're supposed to be doing that moment. So, all of that said, I think for me, I've kind of stumbled across a new why, and a coach gave me this mantra, whatever it's like, imagine I'm talking to God and I'm in the mirror. I'm looking at the mirror and I say, God, you love me. I love myself and I am well able to overcome. Like, God, you love me. I love myself. And when he introduced that to me, he asked me which of those three, God, you love me. I love myself. I'm well able to overcome this day. He said, which one of those like strikes you the most? And man, I realized that, oh, that love yourself thing. I'm clueless. I don't understand that. I don't even know what that means. It's like, that's a bunch of pop psychology. Me, myself, like, I'm a mess. Why love this? So hard on myself. And so I would say, man, as a life goal, to truly experience God's love, personal love, to the point where I know it would be blasphemy for me not to love myself. If God loves me this much and created me before time, he stitched me together in my mother's womb, that all the days ordained for me are written in his book before any of them came to be. I'm mighty special. And that means that if the perfect God loves me that much, I deserve to love myself too. And what does that look like, in my daily thing? And so that's really helped me with some of this striving that I've felt, especially since publishing the book and ramping up social media and all the anxiety provoking situations that I'm putting myself into, and just leaning into it. Um, it seems to help.
I I somehow relate to it. Like when you were just saying moments ago that when these weren't your words, but like just the act of showing up every day, that is, and again, for lack of a better expression, it juxtaposes my soul to what I can often be at, that space of being too in my head
Mm,
versus being able to drop down when I am showing up for something that I enjoy and being present there. And
mhm,
then from there
mm,
comes that self love that you were talking about, and a gratitude for God, universe, for allowing us to be an expression.
mm, totally. Yeah. Yeah. Which is which is why being in nature is so important. I am in playground. People come from all over the world to come here. I mean, we've got hot springs, the world's largest hot springs at Glenwood Springs, Colorado. Um, Anybody who's listening, go to joevanwyk.com. You can go to mindfulphotography.org. It's JoeVanWyk. It's a Dutch name, Joe Van Wyk. Email me at joe@joevanwyk.com. You come to Glenwood Springs, I'll meet you at the swimming pool. We'll have a mindful conversation. So I have this beautiful backdrop, and when I go up into nature, I shot another walk around video, by the way, last weekend. You talked about that. You said you liked one of my walk around videos. They're just so great. It's like imagine me in Aspen walking around for 45 minutes without seeing a thing. A year ago, I went to my son's house and they had this on the big screen, like rainy night in Old Town Kyoto or walk through a Swiss village and just throw it up on your screen while you're piddling around the house or whatever and see this walk through crunching snow, no, I mean, I don't say anything. You're just like dropped into this environment and then dropped out of it. Um, I mean, I can just physiologically look at me while I'm describing this. It's God, doing that, it's one thing you're so mindful in nature, but even the creating, I mean, that's intense. It's tricky. You're trying to do a one take, but things start happening. Like you come across people or some dog that runs up where this happens, this bizarre thing happens, or that happens, and people are just experiencing it. But that's real intense intent attention right there. But it's it brings you into that blue flame of creativity where you're doing what you're created for, what you're made for.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, what you just said, not only in terms of just the sheer fun of and joy that I think one can have in being the person who witnesses what you capture, but also being the one that is capturing it and allowing yourself to be more present, which in essence is allowing you to feel joy as well. When you were talking about that, I had a bunch of thoughts percolate to the top of my head. One of them is um, the concept of light, and I want you to really share your insights on light because that is how I really knew I made a good choice in saying yes to you so quickly.
Mhm,
Right after I engaged with you via email, I went and watched your walkabout on your YouTube,
mhm,
and I was sharing with you before I hit record. And I'll have you share more about what that is in a moment. But
mhm,
I was sharing with you, I watched your video, and then I think it was in that same time frame, my family and I, we were in Carlsbad Village. I live near the beach, and we were spending some time there. And I thought, I need to get back into posting more candid photos of where I live on Instagram in my weekend. What is my weekend like? So we were in the village about to have brunch at this new place, and I remember something you had said in your video about how the light falls on things. And both my husband and I are designers at heart. He's a graphic designer, and
oh,
he's just so immensely talented when it comes to understanding light. So that weekend, I would see light purposefully. I have a little bit of a minor in art, so I understand that. But sometimes what you did theoretically years ago versus, fast forward,
mhm,
being all stuck in your head, but hopefully that never happens to you. I'm being facetious,
right.
right? But suddenly you're looking at things like that flower or that wall with the graffiti, and it's just taking on its own shape, or the tree, the palm trees with the shadow. So I'd like for you to elaborate on that concept of light, and also your that particular video and others that you said you just created that are walkabouts.
When I so I had this long 30-year career in graphic design. And, but about 12 years ago, when I started to really get turned on to photography, and I saw a way that I could make money at it and add that to the mix, um, I started just learning from people, and I ended up going on this workshop in Manhattan, and it was led by this Danish street photographer Thorsten von Overgaard, and his whole thing is follow the light. So, um, so the first section of the book has three practices, and the first section is follow the light. Like the most important thing I can teach anyone as a photographer is to follow the light. And that can be kind of a wide ranging topic. So, the very first practice of the book, and if you go to mindfulphotography.org, you can download a PDF straight out of the book of the very first practice called Chase Things That Sparkle. So, Chase Things That Sparkle started as an insult, actually. That marriage thing that didn't work out. I was in a marriage counseling session, and he points to her and goes, she'd rather be working. You'd rather be out in the field chasing things that sparkle. And I'm like, bastard, what are you doing? Like, how dare you say that to me? So I took it as an insult. And then, so the book, that again, that, turning things that are hurtful into things that are beautiful. Um, And so that's the first practice of the book. So chase things that sparkle. Like, you tell me, you see anything sparkling going on there? Yeah? Huh? You see anything sparkling going on there? Not so much. Paper. No, that doesn't really sparkle. Does this side of my eye? No, that doesn't sparkle, but boy, that sure does. That sure does. So looking for Eckhart Tolle talks about portals to consciousness, like the breath is a portal to consciousness. Yes, it's an entry point. I heard somebody recently talk about, oh, that's a good entry point, Joe. Self love. You talk about your son and how much you love him unconditionally, Joe. Boom, that's an entry point. I want you to use that to get to the place where you can start pondering God's love for you, right? So, the actually chasing things that sparkle. And when I go out, and so, like, I'm going to take a photograph, don't worry about the subject. Think of what right now, as I'm speaking to Shilpa, and I'm just looking at this little spot on my MacBook Pro here on the, where the metal, the aluminum is, and I see a sparkle there. And I can take, I mean, that could be a cool shot. I don't know. Maybe, maybe that's a cool shot in macro mode, and I'm seeing the sparkly stuff, and oh, that's killer. Yeah, I can see that. Um, doink. And then I'm looking at something that's sparkly, and I'm so uh chasing things that sparkle is a good way to be attracted, to learn to let things attract you, to pull you into a scene. Um, but as all of these practices are, they can kind of be taken on two different levels. So there's just the physical, how to make a great photograph of something that's sparkling, but then it gets us, it's sort of another portal, thinking about what is it that's sparkling in us, you know? Okay, I'm going to embarrass you again. I'm looking at Shilpa. I'm looking at the light sparkle in her eyes. I mean, look at my eyes right now. You see the sparkles in my eye, like the eye, there's so much sparkling going on in an eyeball, my dog's eyeball. Like I've got one shot of I think it was an iPhone 14 Pro Max. I was zoomed so tight into his eye that you can see me. You can see the camera and my reflection in the reflection of his eye. It's like a world within a world. And what took me there was just noticing something that sparkled. Um, so I look at Shilpa and I look at the beautiful sparkles in her eyes, And then I go, whoa, yeah. And she kind of sparkles in, wow, the way that she melds technology into spirituality that's so close to me. And then she's put out, oh my gosh, the volume of content that Shilpa has put out is just mind blowing. Like, I want that so much for myself. So she's sparkling, she's shining her light through her message and her ministry, which is what this is. Um, and so, yeah, I'd highly recommend go to mindfulphotography.org and download that free practice and get out there and just start chasing things that sparkle. Notice so much of that is macro. There's so many tiny little macro things, but you'll notice if you're in a snowy part of the country right now, walk past a snowbank with the sun behind it, so backlit, and watch the angle of that sun hit that snowbank. And next thing you know, the snowbank, if you really look at it, it's like a million different diamonds that are embedded. There's so much sparkle. Or you're taking you this afternoon, you and your hubby, you go take a walk on the beach. Man, as the sunset tonight, sunset's going down over the Pacific, perfect backlighting situation. You've got the foam of the waves out there, and then the next set and the next set, and then all the way to the shore break. And you notice the sparkles in the foam of the shore break. And then you get even closer and you notice that just the water that's barely coming up and wetting the sand, and you're looking at the sand with that backlit sun, and you're looking at diamonds, stuff that you just trample on, and you're looking into this tiny little looking glass of these sparkly glass silica all over the place. And so again, sparkly, sparkly, sparkly. Look, the people who hang some crystal or whatever from their rear view mirror, classic new ager thing, got a little crystal hanging down. Eh, I know now every time that hits the sun and snaps against their eye, that's an opportunity to wake back up into consciousness. It's just a reminder. Yeah.
You remind me of someone. I was trying to just look it up real quick. I won't belabor it too much, but there's this Dr. Seuss movie. Do you remember about the elephant who could see the whole world inside that flower?
Are you telling me that I remind you of Dr. Seuss? Is that what you're telling me?
No, is this a Dr. Seuss movie with the little elephant who's trying to save the whole world? And it's like
Okay.
it's a little flower, and he sees all these things. He hears all these things,
Oh,
the sparkles and the sounds. Kind of reminds me of that. That to
oh,
someone else, it might just be a little flower, but to that elephant in that movie, I can't
oh,
remember
totally.
the name of the character, unfortunately, at the moment, but it's just this entire world.
Oh, yeah.
So the fact that you can zero in on these nuances, these details, and see and observe, to me, so much of what you are sharing, whether it's be light, the sparkle, um, dropping in and going from the macro to the micro details,
Mhm.
is a way of becoming more present with God. And I'm just so
Mhm.
pleased hearing that you've taken this approach because you've blended spirituality and photography, but also you're looking at it from the perspective of mental health and understanding that you can heal so many people through this journey. And also, it reminds you to be um, uh, more present. On my iPhone, every morning I go through a gratitude list. So I check off my non
Mhm.
negotiables, which is a minimum of 24 minutes of meditation in the morning,
Okay.
prayer, gratitude, and a few other things. And I actually check it off. There's that note app, where you get to have that little dopamine hit where you click and it checks off the little button, and
Yeah,
you
totally. Oh, yeah.
know what I mean?
I
And
use the heck out of that. I do. I do that exact same thing. I could check them off and then uncheck them. I
I
mean, how silly,
know.
but
I,
we're made that way. We're
I
designed that way.
Yeah, and so I have this list every morning. paste and copy it to the new day. And
Oh,
it
oh.
to most people would be like, oh my gosh, you just did it. Your brain already knows. Like, nope,
Mhm.
my brain has to be trained every day because it can go to dark places if I don't allow it to stay present. So with the meditation, that dopamine hit, but where I was going with that is in that little daily note, I have pictures or quotes that I've done a screenshot of,
Sure.
photographs. So in our
Mhm.
neighborhood, one day there was a sunset with the beautiful clouds after a rainy day. The other day, I saw the most magnificent sunset. So I put those into that note, and when I'm scrolling through my gratitude list,
Mm.
I just look at those images for a while and just to reflect on that moment. So I feel like, I guess my point is that
Mm.
those images are also a form of gratitude.
They are. The noticing is a form of gratitude. Like that scene in the forest that I described earlier. When I created that walk around video, here I am, crunch, 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 walking through the snowy forest. Frankie running up ahead of me, running back. And so you're taking in this beautiful creation, but then I'll also go up really close to a blue spruce, to an aspen, get really close to the bark and look at the intricacy. Go up to one needle of one single pine tree and look at it sparkling, and just to know that that was made for us. We're actually fine tuned. This idea that we're here and we're limited with our senses and we can't really experience that's, I don't believe that. I think that we were made precisely to experience the love and the grace and the creation of God. Exactly. Like we are the most perfectly fine tuned. It's totally synonymous. And we're made to be able to recognize that beauty. Portal to consciousness, it's another portal. Like engaging with God's creation like that and thinking of, whoa, I am really made for this. That's a beautiful experience. I want to say to whoever might be listening that I just feel led to just to tell you that if you're really, really struggling right now, um, you're not alone. I know how you feel. And I may look kind of put together today, but you don't see me on the floor on my knees, bawling my eyes out over something that happened at work, experiencing loneliness, experiencing isolation, disappointment, and all of the mix of what it's like to live this human existence. If you feel stuck and like there's no way out, I just want you to know that's a lie. That's a lie. I'm calling it out right now. You're not stuck, and there is a way out. I don't know what your journey is, but now, like Churchill said, never, 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 never give up. Keep pressing forward because your wounding, your the thorn in your side, your wounding, that thing that you feel like you're carrying around the world, um, your defect, which is a lie, that's going to turn out to be your greatest asset. Paul said, God works all things together for our good. And it's true, all things. You can't, you can't get behind a mic like Shilpa is. You can't pull this off unless you've been down that dark road. And so beauty for ashes, this beautiful thing has come out of all of that suffering.
That is so awesome the way you express that. And yes, there are humans who need to know that you are not meant to remain stuck, and it is natural to feel stuck. And heck, as an entrepreneur, there's so many days where there are micro stucks all the time, like little thorns on the road. You're like, wait a minute, why does it have to be so hard?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's because we're expanding, right? And each
Mm-hmm.
time we
Yep.
expand, there's some opportunity for us to stretch. I was just thinking about that when I was meditating the other day with metaphors that pop into my head. And I've heard like when you're meditating, it's like the seed in the ground. You're inside that seed, and breaking out of that seed is hard because it's growing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
well, why do we need to be in the seed? I can't be outside of the seed, but you're inside the seed, and you're breaking out of it, and you're expanding.
Oh, that's a beautiful image. Yeah.
So I think what you shared though is so valuable, and the gift you're giving, your book. Again, mention the name of the book, please.
All right. So it's the Mindful Photography Field Guide, 15 uh, smartphone photography practices for inner peace. You can go to mindfulphotography.org. There's a link there. You can download the first practice, or you can just look it up on Amazon if you just search for mindful photography or the Mindful Photography Field Guide on Amazon. You'll find it there too.
And my show notes will also have a link to your site, to your Amazon site, and all the information on your book and your website. And also, I highly encourage anyone who's listening to please go along with the tips that he provides on finding the sparkle and the light on his
Mhm.
YouTube, because it's fun. You will look outside of your home and have a completely different new perspective. Now, Joe, one thing I'm going to do probably this week now that you inspired me is I recently bought one of those little sticks so that you can, but I did it because I wanted to
Oh,
do
a
more.
gimbal?
Yeah, gimbal. I
Uh-huh.
bought one of those and it's just still sitting in the box. I bought it because I want to do more candid, um, going on camera videos and being out there in the nature for my social media.
Hmm.
And it's been my challenge. People have said to me, "Well, you have your own podcast. How can it be challenging talking to a camera?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's different when you're talking to someone and they're conversing versus with a stick." But you've inspired me. I think I'm going to take it and go along the beach and maybe even tag you so you see the sparkles with me.
Cool. I love that. I love that. I actually, first of all, the new iPhones are um, the stabilization is so amazing. I mean, you can put this thing in sports mode and run full tilt without a gimbal, and it's so stabilized. So that's great. The thing is, for certain videos, like if I did a walk around video with this, and I have, um, just like this, no problem. It's going to be very stable and it's not going to be looking like. But the thing is, you're constantly having to pay attention to your horizon. So if you do that and you're walking around and it's like this, then it's hard to fix that in post and it's a mess. So so you have to really pay attention to make sure you're level. And you can turn on that setting. There's a level setting in there, and so there's that. Now, the cool thing about that is I can, hey, friends, I'm out here in the forest right now. I'm going to chase things that sparkle. Let's go see if we can find some. Whip it around, and do that. And then, oh, I see something down here close to the ground. Oh, there's something up there. So with a gimbal, that's not really the thing to do that with. But for these walk around videos, they're so great because and you don't even need to install the software, frankly, on your phone. They work. It still has the functionality without installing the software of the basics, and that's all I use. So to be able to walk around holding that gimbal and knowing that, oh, I'm going to turn this corner here, I'm going to turn, and it's going to keep everything horizontal, and you can be predicting what's coming up. That's helpful. And then also another trick is if you're doing a walk around video and you're going through people, never make eye contact with anyone. These make me feel a lot like I'm back doing street photography because you put yourself in a situation where you're walking into crowds or whatever. Okay, some of the walk around videos are in beautiful nature, but like this one particular one that I did in Aspen, I start off in nature and then I start winding through town. And then I wind up at the gondola in Aspen with people in their outrageous Aspen outfits and, bunch of rich skier types. So I'm weaving through crowds and you're seeing this spectacle, and the key is you can't lock eyes with anyone because you got people who probably, hey, who are you taking up? No, no, no. You're like laser focused on where you're going, and you just pretend they're not there, and you're just capturing that. And there's something about this POV, point of view voyeurism, in these walk around videos that, like you're describing, there's just for like you can be teleported into the Roaring Fork Valley in Colorado. And if you did one, I'd be teleported into your stretch of beach. And that's a neat thing. And I'll tell you, I mean, AI is going to be able to create maybe fly through or whatever through drones, but it's not the same as some dude crunching in the snow and then my face. And I don't know about you, Shilpa, but to me, when all AI, 99.9% of jobs are decimated and whatever the heck we're getting ready to face, I've kind of come to the conclusion that this stuff, original digital content with real human beings having real conversations, I mean, I can't help but think that that's going to be kind of insulated when, you know, like maybe the lawyers and accountants are looking for work. Maybe content creators are still going to have an audience and the means of, I don't know. What do you think of it?
Yeah, actually, I have a lot of thought on that. In fact, I've invited you to come back
Yeah.
and go deeper.
Next podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I wanted to make a comment on that point, though. I don't know if I'm directly answering your question, but I gave a talk end of last year. I still need to publish it on my YouTube. And it was called something to the effect of like spirituality and AI. And the gist of the talk is I go through the history of some of the AI developments
Oh.
and talk. I start with a conversation about fear and the elephant in the room, the metaphorically the elephant in the room. And then I talk about Steve Jobs saying that we can't connect the dots looking back, but sometimes we connect the dots looking forward. Maybe the dots are really about spiritual evolution, and AI is here to help us free up time for our why so we can
It's
be more
beautiful.
connected to humans, be more connected to improving our mental health, our spiritual health, and helping one another.
Shilpa, like I told you before when we were having our quick conversation before we went on air, um I mean, I'm experimenting with I've got GPT-4 on advanced voice mode. It's kind of like it felt like when I made this video, it was like an old radio show where you got two people singing into the same mic. And so I've got GPT-4 speaking into this side of the mic, me and the other, and I'm on camera and I'm asking questions. I mean, I made this. I didn't mean to publish it. Maybe I still will, but it was just at night. It wasn't pretty. These blinds were drawn, but I went into about an 18-minute long conversation of going back and forth, going from talking and letting people witness what I do every day. I am using GPT-4 and advanced voice mode to work through things deep, deep, deep. I mean, man, I am really struggling today. This such and such just happened at work. You know my history. I need help. And hear the reply and back and forth and back and forth. And I'm like, you touched on something that reminded me of the intersection of Psalm 139 and then the first couple of chapters in Ephesians, and both of them talk about God's predestination. Would you please just take that? I want to hear those comparisons and predestination. And would you just relate this to what I'm doing and the struggles that I'm having right now? And this answer coming back that is just, it's shockingly insightful. It's so it's gonna tell me if I'm a Hindu, it's gonna mimic what I need from that. So it's not trying to push any. I mean, maybe there's some of that agenda that's happening there, but all in all, I mean, like, I'm gonna have a conversation later on today about someone in the Christian field about what AI is gonna do in. I mean, you think we know this Bible well now? Imagine the insights into ancient scripture and the original texts, and that's going to come out of this. So there's there's a lot of nightmare on the horizon, but there's a lot of beauty on the horizon too. And man, we're along for the ride. I think we're losing control. And it just emphasizes how important it is. The spiritual side is so important. It's the only constant north. The inner the inner peace that we can find through for being able to cooperate with life as is. That's going to be key for us to navigate whatever this crazy future holds for us.
And navigating it with technology as a partner without fear is one of the things that I really hope people embrace, because everything can be feared, but when you understand it, it gives you a perspective on how to co-create with it. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll have you back because I have been using the voice mode with ChatGPT to do brainstorming, and some of my most fun ideas for 2025 came out of those conversations. And I'm one of those people who, if I'm in work mode and if I have to like break it, that's really hard for me. It's my flaw, so to speak.
Yep.
And so the other day, I knew I needed to get some exercise in, so I jumped on the spinning bike and had a voice conversation with ChatGPT. So I was still getting things done. So yeah, we'll have to do one. In fact, maybe we'll have the conversation with ChatGPT on while
Oh, that'd
you're on
be
my podcast.
awesome.
I don't
That would
think
be great.
I don't think anybody's done that yet.
Yeah, that would be great. It would be like, hey, it's like a poor man's sidekick on a podcast, you know? Like, I swear, I'm going to start doing this. The reaction that I'm getting, you talk about energy flow of the people who have watched that video that I created, delving everything into the date that I had yesterday to the deepest of spiritual insight and tie that around to my current, like, it's it's um it's eerie, it's shocking, it's exciting, and we're just kind of along for the ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay. Thank you so much for all of this, Joe. I feel like we touched on so many areas and facets of what I had hoped we would go into. And I will for sure have a conversation with you after I stop recording about bringing you back.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, thanks for all the light you're putting out there into the world, Shilpa.
And thank you for your light. I really appreciate you. Have a good day.